Hello and welcome back to Oh No, Not Another Podcast. I'm Kaameel, as you know, joined by Mr. Co-host, Mr. Snare, and
Hello.
Alex Schmid is our guest tonight. How are you gentlemen doing?
Yeah, good on you, buddy. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure. So, Alex, let's start off with something basic here. Who the hell are you, man? Give us your background in South African esports.
My name's Alex Schmid, and my nick is Sloan.
Oh.
I got involved in esports more like, I don't think it was even called esports when I got involved in esports. I think it was just called video games back in the day when I was around 11 or 12 years old. I had some Asian neighbors um, who are very big in the South African community. A girl called Sharon Shazchik Wason and her brother Brandon Latency Wason. And they got me to get my big RCT monitor and white-looking, sort of office desktop. And I remember running it across the lawn over to their house. And ever since then, I've sort of been playing games with them and sort of started off on Counter-Strike. I was decent at shooters. Then I realized I was actually much better at sort of strategy games and fell into Dota. So yeah, that's sort of my background in esports. And from then, I went overseas, played Dota, I guess, semi-pro in the UK, had one or two decent teams, and then my sort of last team at the end, we did very well and made wildcards for Beyond the Summit, but I had to pull out as I was returning to South Africa. At which time I was asked to come and consult for a new startup esports company, which is today called Mega 8. Yeah, that's sort of my position, and right now I am currently the COO / head of operations of the company.
Well, that's quite a. I didn't know you were a professional gamer. That's news to me as well. Holy crap, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, back in the day. I mean, I play now. I mean, I'm not as good, and the 200 ping on ranked is an absolute killer, especially when you're the initiating offlane player. So it
This is
doesn't
why you
really
play
work out.
support and ranked.
No. This is why you play core in ranked and you just farm.
I feel like playing support in ranked is like you just go in there as a babysitter. You try to make sure your team doesn't tilt, and you make sure your team doesn't tilt, and make sure the enemy team tilts first. That's your job as a support in ranked.
True,
It's
but
really
the problem
fun.
is then everybody just feeds, and you can have the best start. Like you can make the best 12. You can make the first 12 minutes like the best sort of start for your team, and then it just goes to like one or two team fights, and guys start feeding, and then you're like, damn it, there goes the roaming. Good start. Anyway, but that's Dota for you. It's an evil,
Speaking
evil brother.
speaking of actually your history within as an actual game, as opposed to like semi-pro, even as it were, um, what's the difference just in terms of the pubs of like just in terms of how things go, and professionalism of all the teams, just across the board? Let's exclude the top teams. What's the work ethic like overseas in the UK versus what you find here? And what's encouraging, what's more appealing about this market than it would be about the European market?
So, okay, that's a lot of questions there. So, I think the first part is in terms of professionalism in Europe is that there's clearly more money in it.
Mm.
So we had one or two sponsors on board at the time, small time, but we had sort of contracts, and our team got contracted in. I was only in the team for well 3 months of when we started going semi-pro. At the time, I studied my masters and had to sort of pull out toward the end because I was one writing my final exams and two returning to South Africa. But I think there's a bit more sort of professionalism, as there's a bit more sort of structure to esports overseas as compared to here, and that comes, I guess, with the money flowing in. But it's also an attitude, and the bigger thing as well is that with South Africa, we're limited to playing with South Africans when it comes to competitive. Whereas over there, I played with a guy from Israel, Sweden, and two guys from Romania. That was the team, So it was different cultures, different, I guess, yeah, sort of regions. But because of the ping difference, we could all play together, and it brought quite a cool vibe to the team because you were sort of learning about new people and stuff. But everybody was very sort of, I don't know, it came across as just a very professional environment. And playing against other big teams, I guess they were tier 3 teams. They also, I mean, it was just kind of like organization was just like that. Guys were practicing 4 or 5 hours a day. Guys would pitch up to games on time. It was just well run, or just maybe, and more from a player's point of view than anything else. The players really just put in a lot of effort, and that's the one difference I see compared to South Africa. And then in terms of where I see South Africa positive compared to Europe is that we have so much potential. South Africa has a lot of potential in players. I look at the WRG team, for example, and the Sinister 5 team that's playing in the Mega 8 Pro 16. And those guys, to be honest, can be playing at tier 3, potentially even tier 2, but they have to put in the sort of 6 to 8 hours. Which, from an inside tip I heard the other day, that they were meant to be, but a lot of them aren't. I don't know how true that is, but I think it's a case of, again, you need the money to come into the industry so these guys can have a sustainable career in esports, and especially in Dota.
Especially in Dota. How much actually would you think it would be an adequate amount per month, say, for, if we were to say, what should the average game, what should be the minimum wage of a professional gamer be in SA?
Yeah, in SA it's tough. I mean, to be honest, right now, if I'm brutally honest, from a tournament organizer's point of view, nothing. I think the issue is that there's just not enough money in the industry yet. There's big prize pools, but there's not enough endorsement. So a lot of the players make their money from sort of endorsements and like from sponsors and that sort of thing. And also there's not enough consistency of tournaments. I mean, Mega 8 obviously is trying to put out as much Dota as possible, but there's just not enough. We need all the other tournament organizers to be throwing Dota tournaments as well. And that's just not happening at the moment. So we need more consistency. And once you have more consistency and more prize money being won, then you'll see more teams coming up because it's going to be more of an attractive investment. Sin 5 being a great example of that. And then you'll see sort of once prize money starts flowing into these MGOs, you'll see the players being able to get paid. So I think right now, if you're an MGO looking to pay your players, I mean, I think it's more of a side gig, almost like a sort of second job. And I would say your minimum wage on that would probably be about 5 to 10,000 Rand. I would say at the moment is probably what it deserves. But I wouldn't say more than that at the moment. But if you're looking to go pro, and if South Africa gets to that stage where we can compete with internationals, I mean, players should be getting paid around 30 to 40k a month, as long as they can obviously,
Perform.
put up the goods for that.
Yeah, and actually win tournaments.
Yeah, well, that's it exactly. Sort of perform. They have to perform for it. But I guess that's the nature of the beast. I mean, that's esports. You look at some pro players, you see them joining Navi, and you think, wow, this guy must be good. He plays for Navi, and 3 months later, Navi's got a new roster, and you never see that guy again. So it is what it is. But yeah, I think South Africa's got a long way to go, but we can get there. We just have to get there.
I mean, in terms of like salaries and stuff in esports, but in Dota 2 more specifically, is a very hostile situation. Like in League, that's how it mostly works. It's like salaried, contracted players, sort of like how a Barclays Premier League football team would function. But in Dota, it's very hostile because the prize monies are so big. It's those salaries and stuff mean nothing. People just are so results driven, just for those big prize pools, the qualifying points for TI, all that kind of jazz. That it kind of sways I'm talking international scale, the ecosystem of Dota. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys know how the LoL model works?
More or less.
I mean, maybe it's worth for the viewer, for the listeners to sort of find out. From what I understand,
explain it first, please.
From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Riot Games is owned by a company called Wabu. Wabu is then owned by Tencent.
Yes.
If anybody knows the South African stock market, Naspers owns a very big percentage of Tencent.
Is that like 45% or something?
Yeah, I think it's something. I think it's only 35%, but it's worth so much money, and it's their baby that keeps making their money. But the point is that they own League of Legends, but they also own the teams, or they at least contract the teams, and these teams are contracted on I think it's a 6-month or a yearly basis, and that gives them the option to obviously pay them. Whereas the Valve model is so open that they don't want to mess with the teams. They don't seem to want to touch them. They've even made it more open now with this new majors system as well. They don't want involvement. They kind of want us to play Dota. They want us to spend our money on all these items, but that's sort of the furthest it's going to go. Whereas the Riot Games model is a sustainable model because it's got such a large following, and therefore because it's got what I think it's like 100 million viewers or something on average, they can get, or in total they can get that amount of money through to the teams, and that's made it now a sustainable sort of esport in a sense.
Don't you guys think that it's somewhat to be expected though? The fact that Dota would end up being the way it is, like, because I often find that I've often had this thought, right, about how the psychology of a person tends to follow the psychology of a game. So you'll find that a lot of people who play a specific kind of game, not that they'll be the same type of person, but when you see the way that they think, you can understand why it's that they enjoy that game. So for instance, using your example that you were mentioning earlier about the difference between shooter players or strategic / Dota players, right? Whenever you watch a major tournament and you just, if you just put the team side by side between, let's say, LoL players, Dota players on one side, and then you'll have Battlefield and COD players, or CS players, sorry, you can immediately kind of see, right? And you can just see how they interact, the way that they present themselves, the thing that they say. There's this thing about the game that leads certain type of people to be drawn towards it. And Dota seems to have a very elitist mindset at its core. It seems to give you that option or understanding of doing whatever the hell you want, and no one's gonna help you, no one's gonna baby you. You kind of have to make your own way the entire time. Whereas with LoL, for example, because not all the champions are available to you from the onset, from the get-go, you kind of have to bracket your expectations of what the game can give you based on what the developers want, right? So,
Fair
thinking
point.
like on that merit, what do you think? Like, I think I would expect that Dota would be as chaotic as it is now. Like, even when as Valve is trying to introduce the new major system, it's a good thing, but there's still so much work to do. Like, it's very clear that Valve, the way they've implemented this, never expected to be in this position where they'd actually have to act as a sort of regulatory body.
Yeah, for sure. But you can see how they're trying to take their involvement out of it. I mean, obviously they had the Frankfurt Major and they had whatever, and it was done by PGL as a production company, but it was the Valve Major. And now, I mean, what the recent major was an ESL Major, am I right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the new system. So they've sort of handed over responsibility. Now they've, as you said, they've become like this regulatory body, but really what they are is just like a big admin in the sky that says yes, no,
Yeah,
you know, and gets the profit from it in a way. So again, handing off more responsibility, and that's Valve's model. Whereas LoL want to be involved. Riot Games, they want to be involved in the tournament running. They want the intricacies, and they can go from there. But going back to your point, Reed, the Dota being that game, I find it funny though, because if I look at a game like Counter-Strike and I look at the players that play Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike's the kind of game that if you 1v4, 1v5, you can technically win it by yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas you look at a game with Dota, if you're a 1v5 support Shadow Shaman, you're not going to win it. It's almost an impossibility. You got a 99.9% chance of losing that game 100%. So it kind of mind boggles me in the sense of why guys don't realize that Dota is a team game at its core. Yep. It's a 5-man team game. You play Counter-Strike casual, you 20 guys on a team. You play competitive, now it becomes a team game. Now it's a 5-man team game. Dota, from casual to competitive, is a team game through and through. And I think players just, I don't know, for some reason don't get that or don't understand it, at least in the lower tiers. And it's become self-destructive because it's like, I'm going to pick carry, I'm going to pick carry, I'm going to pick carry, and then suddenly everyone's a carry, and then there's one support, and he goes, well, I have to buy everything, buy all the wards. The poor guy I always feel for in the end. And
that pos 8 support.
That pos 8 support, and I'm just sitting there going, guys, but this is so counterintuitive. Pick an initiator, pick a roamer, pick a support, pick a mid, pick a core. Fantastic. Here we go. Now we got a team. Work together, win the game. Everyone's happy. But it's like, I don't know. I guess it's just the community, and it's weird how it does breed that sense of sort of toxicity. And it's something I just can't wrap my head around. But maybe because it's free to play as well.
Yeah. There's no stakes. Like, there's no quote unquote stakes.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
You can do what you want.
Also, you do what you want. Yeah.
Completely. I think it's difficult because Dota is one of those games where even at even on a team level, even if you're playing as a team, it is one of those games where legitimately you can do what you want, right? So there's so many different ways to win that everyone, especially if you're playing just on the casual and or lower tier side of things, you imagine that you have the singular best idea that no one else has ever been able to figure out in Dota. And if only your idiot teammates just could see your idea, then you just easily win the game. Now, if 9 people all have this idea, and it seems to be sometimes like everyone has this idea, but sometimes it works, which is not helpful to dispelling you of the notion that you know what you're doing.
You guys have a real positive attitude about your game of choice, eh?
Well, the point is, I think Snare points it out there. It's that one idea that actually does work that keeps you coming back. I think that's the point. It's like, okay, guys, I think we should push, and the other guy's like, no, I think we should rather just farm and then go jungle. But it's like your idea to push catches that guy out of position, and now you're like suddenly, instead of thinking you're gonna get one tower, now you've got tier 2, and you're harboring on tier 3 as well. So you know what I mean? I agree. I guess a lot of Dota players are negative about it, but it's when you have that one strat or that one move that you just pull off, gives such satisfaction.
That's why Bulldog got famous, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
I always say like 9 out of 10 Dota games you don't enjoy, but you're always chasing that one game where you just get that win in such a fashion. That 75 minutes mega creep comeback or that kind of jazz. It makes the game worth it. All that time invested.
That's the thing. I think that's the point. I think because the game is so difficult,
Yeah.
it keeps you coming back. Whereas if you play like a normal campaign game, like a Call of Duty or something, it just becomes too easy after a while, and it just becomes a bit boring. There's no challenge. Whereas Dota, it's a constant challenge, and sometimes I do want to kill myself, but it is what it is.
Like most Dota players. So now that we are in the topic of Dota 2, I'm going to ask you a question as a Mega 8 representative. Why Dota? Because in this year, in South African esports,
Yeah.
most of the tournament organizers have been pushing for Counter-Strike. So you guys decided to stick with Dota. What is the reason behind that?
So, I mean, the reason behind it is simple. I mean, well, it's not simple, but I mean, the reason behind it is it's simply myself and the founder of Mega 8, whose name is Vince Manor, who's also the CIO, Chief Innovations Officer of Kakiso Media, are both avid Dota players. We love Dota. I don't think we'll ever uninstall the game. Maybe once, and then we'll reinstall it again. But the point is that we're massive fans, and I think we want to sort of get this Dota community going. And I think Mega 8 from its outset has always been sort of loved in a sense by the sort of top end of the Dota community, and we wanted to keep giving back. And we saw this league as an opportunity to do so. But in saying that, we are looking to move on to focus on other games, including CS and FIFA from 2018.
That's very interesting. I like that you guys stuck with Dota. I also like that you guys branching out. Now, like you said, you guys started up this Pro 16 league now. I'm a big fan of it. But why the change in format? You guys had the Winter Cup earlier this year. Was this a straight up normal tournament style? Why did you guys think you should change it up?
So, I mean, I think the one thing we realized, what we looked at, is that there's not enough consistency, and I mentioned it before. There's not enough consistency for the Dota guys at the moment. Like we can host one tournament, but then I mean, when's the next one? I know there's this Join the Legion tournament coming up with Mental State, but I think it's an exhibition match.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
bar that, I mean, there's not really anything until the VS Masters planned or given. So I think we saw it as everybody was doing CS at the time when we decided to make this. CS was sort of the popular choice, and understandably. But it was a case of we needed to add more consistency to the Dota community and give guys game time, because the biggest thing that I find, and I can see that they are lacking, is just technically game time. And we thought that a league format would do them better in that sense, giving them constant week in, week out play.
All right, fair point. And like you said in the earlier question that you answered, you can actually see that passion coming through. I'm going to use your Winter Cup for example. The production value of that tournament. Even White Rubber Gaming player Chidawi, he tweeted, he said, regardless of prize pool, this is how a tournament should be run, because I thought it was absolutely amazing. So props to you guys for that.
Thanks. Well, I mean, it's actually props to our sister company, who's owned by the same group, Kakiso Media, UBS, Open Brew Studios. I mean, they're a fantastic team that we've sort of trained and set up there in an esports fashion, and they've come through every time. They do this every day from a TV production point of view, and steering them towards a bit of online esports production has done them good and done us obviously amazing. And you'll be seeing our LAN event will be produced by them as well. So look out for some top class production, sort of TV broadcast quality.
Oh, so is that an official announcement, or that is going to be a Mega 8 LAN event? Oh no.
It is a. Oh no, he's done it. It is probably going to be a Mega 8 LAN event. We are confirming dates, but it's in the pipeline. Let's put it to you that way. It's in the pipeline. Let's not promise. Let's not promise everything.
Okay, so the oh no was not because the Mega 8 LAN event was announced. I'm happy about that. It's because I had a sudden spike of lag and I was like, oh no, did the internet break because Mega 8 are announcing a LAN? Just one of those.
Well,
things.
I can confirm there's going to be a tournament after this league, and this league is going to be leading up to what is going to be the Summer Cup. The top 8, the top 4 in each group of the Pro 16 will be qualifying for that event. So look out and look forward to that.
Definitely will be doing that. Oh, go, Mr. Snake.
So I have a question actually, like
Yes.
on that note about tournaments and stuff. Have you guys ever considered having a tournament like that would, for all intents and purposes, exclude the top teams, like so a tournament for the lower end side of things, for the tier 2 and tier 3, tier 4 type of players that exist in our country.
So we haven't, to be honest, we haven't considered in a normal tournament format. To be honest, simply because of viewership and what we would think we would get for it. But what we have considered is a sort of academy style build up tournament where we were looking to get some of the top players in the country to come in and coach some teams, and get them to sort of sort of coach them in sort of strats and getting them to, in drafting or whatever it is. And we were actually looking at CS, and I sort of built a model for Dota as well on it. But it's getting the guys to commit and getting them to put time aside. But what we would do is, the format we thought of, and you guys can comment on this, is that we would get random players, so no teams, but just players, to sort of apply for positions, and there would be sort of, let's say, I think we said 8. There'll be 8 spots per role in Dota. So 8 spots for carry, 8 spots for mid, 8 spots for offlane, 8 spots for roaming support, and 8 spots for hard support. And you would put your name down for the position you would want to be taught in, and you would have, then we would obviously fill up 8 spots in each. You would then be put into a 2-week training course simply for your role, and then after that you would be split up into teams, and you'd be picked by coaches, kind of like a voice, the voice sort of thing. And then your teams would be put together as random teams, and you would play against each other in a tournament toward the end, and the winners would obviously win prize money and.
Oh, that's actually pretty fascinating. I actually also built a model for a tournament like that. My idea was it's a bit different. So it's kind of like how this Join the Legion is run. You have one, I would say, Masters player from each MGO, and then you put that Masters player as the captain of that team in Pass 5 hard support, and then you get 4 like non-competitive players in SA, 4 casuals, non-Masters players to join and play in that team, and then they play together, and you run a whole tournament like this. So they're playing captain's draft or something. Like it's a serious tournament for new players, but it's also a fun tournament,
Yeah. Well, I think that's it. I mean, we're looking to want to put it together next year. The problem is getting the top players to be able to commit, because they already have their own commitments. Guys like Castaway and so on and so forth already have their own commitments for their own team, never mind personal commitments such as school or work or whatever it is. And now they've got to add on this coaching commitment. It becomes quite difficult. It becomes quite a logistical and administrative nightmare in some senses. But I think if guys were full-time esports players, it wouldn't be too much of an issue. Let's look at it next year when there's a bit more stability in the industry. And I think what it will do is I think the one thing we notice in both in CS and Dota is there's such a skill gap between, I guess, even in Dota now, I think it's the top 3, maybe top 4. Between the top 4 and then, I guess, downward. It's such a huge skill gap. And what I would love to do is get like a skills transfer from those top 4 to the bottom guys, so that, we can obviously start building a competitive, stage. And I think WRG and those sort of guys would appreciate it more, because watching the Mega 8 Pro 16, these guys are just stomping teams, and they literally are just trolling them. I mean, I saw the last WRG game. I think there was 5 meteor hammers, and the guys just sat outside base and meteor hammered the towers.
Meteor hammer?
Yeah, they won with 5, not just 5. They just did 5. I mean, it was just a troll.
I didn't think it was possible to win with 1, but okay.
No, you can do it with 5 apparently.
No, I don't think they were trolling. Check this out, right? That's actually a next level strat. So they realize that 1 meteor hammer is not enough to win a game. So it only starts really kicking in after the 3rd or 4th one. That's when the item gets good.
The problem is this was all happening at around 16 minutes in the game.
Oh.
So if it was happening in 40 minutes, I'd agree with you. But unfortunately, it was happening in 16 minutes, and it was a pure troll.
Hammer rush. Okay, I tried to defend the honor, but
fair enough.
I mean,
but anyway.
That is funny. I mean, in defense of these teams, you used to get to stages where even WRG and BVD, when they used to play each other last year, when the old BVD was still around, in some games, when like a best of 5, if one of the games was stumped, I used to remember Donnie doing things like writing letters with Observer Awards, this and that. So PM is a thing in SA Dota, you know. Other teams shouldn't take it too personally.
But that is
DM
Donnie.
a
I mean,
thing in
Donnie.
SA Dota. That is Donnie, yeah.
Donnie is Troll 101. Like, as
Only
good
one
of
of us here have hired him to work at our event. I'm just saying.
That is true, yeah. You actually gave Donnie money.
It's true, but I mean, Donnie was great. I mean, Donnie was actually very
was.
professional on the
Pretty
day. I
Yeah.
can't bash him. I mean, I think I was a little worried. I'd never met him before, and Halberd gave me fears, but they were sort of unsubstantiated fears. He was very professional, and he was a great co-host on the panel.
I feel like the entire
was
reason
brilliant.
I agreed to do this podcast with Kaameel was so that eventually I'd be on camera so I could trash Donnie, but now I can't. Feels bad, man.
Feels bad, man. Feels bad.
He already beat you to it. He trashed the whole SA community, man.
He did, yeah. I wanted to get him back for that, but I actually remember watching that. What tournament was it? Was it MSI Beat It? What in Thailand?
Yeah.
It was MSI Beat It. And I was watching that interview, and I was with who was I with? I was with Saint D and someone else. And we were watching this, and I said to him, dude, I wish I hadn't deleted Twitter because it's about to get lit. But then, I also didn't really disagree at the time. That's water under the bridge.
I love that interview. It was one of my favorite interviews I ever watched. And then Simo just takes the mic and he's like, what Donnie was trying to say.
No, I love Flair's face when you see all this happening behind him.
Yeah.
The one thing we actually can say, right, in terms of SA Dota, is that so back then, around MSI beta time, right, Bravado is miles ahead of everyone else. Energy is the nearest competitor, but not really cutting it. And BVD is just like leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else on the planet. Cool. On SA at the time. Fast forward a couple of years. Last year we have last year WRG breaks the stranglehold, comes through, gives an actual channel to WR2 BVD. So for somewhat 3, 4, 6 months, it's WRG BVD, right? BVD fall off, then it's WRG by themselves. But now you definitely have 3 teams that are in that category of being extremely good. That could, I can definitely see Bravado and Sinister 5 taking games off WRG. If not on the day, depending on the draft, outright beating them, especially given that it's a new patch. So
yeah,
and the gap between, because there was a time where even when WRG was challenging BVD, right, you could always sense that if BVD was at their 100%, they would always beat WRG. Whereas now I don't have that confidence about any of the 3 teams at the top. I obviously still favor WRG given their record, given how they're performing, but I'm not all in on them being absolutely the best team in SA Dota. So there's progress at least being made on that front.
I don't know. I must say though. I mean, I don't know what you guys think of the roster changes that have come through. I think Sinister 5 have done very well.
Yeah.
In getting their team together. The one player that is really showing a lot for me is a guy called Fearbender. He's playing for Epoch, and he, funny enough, used to play for Sinister 5. And I'm surprised they let him go because he's been a fantastic player. But going back to WRG, I'm surprised they dropped Santo and brought in Odu. I must admit, I don't know, that WRG team was functioning, I thought, really, really well. I mean, I know they had a bit of a hiccup against the XTC team, but I mean, I thought, one hiccup, they smashed them in the Mega 8 Winter Cup 3-0. So, I don't know, I'm not convinced about the new lineup yet, but I haven't seen them come up against an amazingly big challenge. So let's see how they come up against. I think their biggest team in their group is Sinister 5. So let's see how they sort of perform against them.
Not 100% certain, but as far as it's my understanding that one of the reasons why Santo left was because WRG moved into a team house and stuff, and the amount of time that they wanted to commit to the game because of how life is running in other directions. Santo wasn't able to do that. Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't a kicking situation.
No, it wasn't clearly you suck, so get out the team. It was just the direction that we want to go at this point in time might not work with the direction that you want to go in your life. So
okay,
no,
that's understandable. Yeah, well, that's esports. It's a cruel beast. It's a risky one as well. And I don't blame anyone who gets out at that point because big risk going forward. But I give a lot of props to those who carry on and push forward for it.
Also, if you were gonna get a replacement player for Santo, I think Odu's can you imagine a better person to get for the type of player the type of thing that Santo was doing on WRG? I can't think of any other player besides Odu that they could have gotten regardless, right? I feel like it had to be him.
It's a fair point. I feel like Odu's done a lot of bouncing around though. I mean, he was playing for BVD at one point, then he was playing for Energy, I there was a team in between that as well. So I'm glad to see that he's settled and found a decent team now, and I hope he can sort of hold on to the spot and perform. So let's see how it goes.
For sure. And on that point you made earlier about Fearbender, I think in the last year he's probably been one of the most improved players that I've seen. And that whole Epoch team, I think, is pretty impressive. I think they're a team to watch for. They can be taking games off almost anybody. But in terms of individual skill, I think they're very high. In terms of players getting tilted and stuff, I think they could have problems there at times. But if somebody can take up that leadership role in that team, I think they could be really, really scary.
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed with him in the qualifiers. I must admit, coming from a tournament organized point of view, I thought that Goliath Gaming were going to be the outstanding qualifying team.
I've been watching Muzzy play Dota for long enough then.
Clearly not.
I'm playing, kidding.
Savage. But I mean, Goliath to me are not performing. I mean, I'm sure it's Goliath that's the team that gets paid to play.
Yes.
Play games, right? Is it only the CS team, or is it also the Dota team?
Both the Dota as well. That was their announcement.
Really?
No actual numbers that came out, but when the team got announced, they said both teams full time, gonna get paid, etc. All that kind of jazz.
Wow. Okay.
I think Goliath Gaming, the issue for me is that I think their core players, both Kota and Muzzy, are pretty good players. Stickerlish has been showing from the games I've watched or casted, he's been pretty okay in the offlane, but the support duo just hasn't made the cut for me, I don't think. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Actually,
Let's see what they do.
My main issue with how Goliath is playing is it's the drafts usually. Because there'll often be games where you'll see, for example, the supports and the cores will come online at different times in different phases of the game. So they'll never actually hit that cohesive power peak as a team. It'll either be we have to rely on Kota or Muzzy getting ultra farmed for the late game and just muscling through, but it never feels like they play the style of game where they're like, okay, at 25 minutes we can group up as 5, just push down towers. So I don't know, like I think it's more of a captaincy thing rather than a skill thing. Because the players are really good.
And that's the thing. I think, looking from a tournament organizer's point of view, we looked at the players and thought, okay, it's a great team. There's some good players in there. Guys who've got experience at the sort of level, played at high, played in our tournaments before with other teams. So we were, I think, expecting a lot from them. And to be honest, I've been, as a personal viewer, a little bit disappointed with them. So I'm hoping they can pick up the game and get an upset, because right now they're sitting 5th in Group 1, tied with Nibble Horde. And they're gonna have to hope for, from what it looks like, a bit of a miracle on the top if they're gonna qualify for the upcoming event.
The LAN not LAN.
The LAN
the LAN not
slash not LAN slash probably LAN slash hopefully LAN thing. Yeah.
That's fair points you made about the Dota, but now let's get back to you as the TO guy, right? Tournament organizer guy.
Yeah.
Now everybody has the answer. Everybody knows what's wrong with SA viewership. So you as a tournament organizer, because everybody's expert on this stuff, but I want to know your opinion as a tournament organizer. Well, what do you think our issues are for viewership SA, and what are things we can do to improve it?
I think obviously we all know. I mean, it's a really tough question, because I think there's a lot of answers out there that are all the same but just said differently. But I think how to improve it. It's a case of growing the market. I think basically from a TO's point of view or tournament organizer's point of view, I have been marketing to the same 80,000 people for the last year, and out of that 80,000 people, I'm getting 2,000 viewers, maybe 3,000 viewers out of those 80,000 people. And funny enough, if you look at the esports stats overseas, that is the percentile of actual players that watch games. And that came out in the ESL, was it ESL Hamburg? Yeah, the ESL Hamburg was just now. I saw the stat, I think it was 3.6 million viewers on ESL Hamburg. How much was it? Did you see the stats on that? It was something around.
To see those stats, though.
Yeah, it was something around 3.6 million viewers on ESL Hamburg. Then they said without Chinese viewers, there was 250,000 viewers.
Whoa!
But China also inflates the numbers, though.
Yeah, but that was the stat, though.
That's
but it shows you. Yeah. But it shows you the stat how different it is, and I think it's a culture thing. In China, obviously, Dota is massive. I mean, LoL's obviously very big as well. Don't get me wrong. But in China, esports is a culture thing and it's huge. And unfortunately, South Africa is probably probably the biggest region with no esports culture as a general region, if you know what I mean. I think we've got 80,000 people here that play games, that love games, and are enthusiasts, but aren't keen to watch. And the problem is, if you look at South Africa's LSM range as well, gaming is it's not an easy entrance. Buying a computer with a decent graphics card and decent RAM and esports equipment, it's a costly exercise, and it's not easy. It's not very accessible. So, I mean, those are technically the problems. But my thinking is we've got to try and get this out to schools. We've got to try and get this out to sort of lower income communities and sort of give them an opportunity to get involved in it and grow esports. I mean, and it doesn't have to be with a PC. It can be with a console, or it can be with a phone. And probably mobile gaming is probably the best way of getting people involved in esports, at least from an entry level. But getting them involved in gaming, getting them to understand that there's a competitive side to this and that there's an actual viewership and sporting side to this, and then using that to push them into esports viewership. I mean, that for me is the way of doing it. I think a lot of people harp around but the problems and whatever. I'd rather look at sort of what we can do to change it and get it done. 100%. And that for me is growing the market in South Africa. Because right now we're probably 80, if I'm over ambitious, 100,000 strong. We need that to be about 1 million to 2 million, 3 million, especially in a country that's got a population of 45 million.
Right. That is a fair point. So now we spoke about ESL Hamburg as one. Now that I found an interesting tournament for me because Mercedes-Benz was in fact the major sponsor for that tournament. What is, like, you as a tournament organizer for Dota 2 or esports here in South Africa, what does that, seeing Mercedes-Benz sponsoring an esport event or a Dota event specifically, what does that mean to you or in the bigger scheme of esports?
Esports is a sport. That's what it tells me. It tells me that esports is now an official sport. I mean, it tells me that big brands like Mercedes-Benz are getting involved. Audi, I know, sponsor Astralis. I've seen brands like Old Spice. Old Spice sponsored an Overwatch tournament the other day. Commercial brands are coming into esports, and that tells me that it's a proper sport. It's a discipline at the moment, and it's one that's growing and it's got viewership, and brands are seeing the value in hitting this new market. But what it is also showing is that it's a new market of a young generation that brands can't see it. And esports is a way of doing that. Funny enough, I walked into a friend's house in Cape Town the other day, and his little brother was on the TV, and I was with the girl I'm seeing at the moment. And we walked in, and she said, "Oh, you're playing FIFA?" And he looked at her and said, "No, I'm not playing FIFA. I'm watching somebody else play FIFA." And she said, "Why the hell would you do that?" And I looked at her, I said, "That's my market. That's my market right there." Literally, I looked at her and said, "That's my market. That's exactly what I would hit." And he's only 12 years old. And I said, that's him and all his mates are my market. So I think people need a bit of time, and I think these sort of guys, these youngsters, need to grow up a bit, get involved, start putting in a bit more time, putting in a bit more effort. But you will see the market both in South Africa and overseas growing slowly but surely within esports, and brands are identifying that and getting in now. So what it tells me is that there's going to be growth, there's going to be explosion. The question is how much.
So people should treat esports like Bitcoin. Buy it now while you can.
I'd be careful with that. I'd be very careful with that bubble. I wouldn't call esports a bubble, but I would say that it is a attractive investment, and sponsors should be looking to get involved, because your future clients are not watching football and rugby anymore. They're watching FIFA, they're watching Dota, and they're watching Counter-Strike.
I mean, to put it in the wise words of Sin5's owner, Mr. Evo, he said esports is still in the embryonic stages right now.
Completely agree. I mean, I think movies and stories have been talking about this for years. We're going to watch people, fighting with robots, or we're going to be watching guys in VR doing stuff. We're all going to be sitting in stadiums with headsets on. Well, it's happening. Yep. It's the 21st century. This is it, guys. Like, we were talking about this in the 90s. Like, we're not going to watch real sports. You're going to watch, crazy things happening with dragons flying. It's going to happen. It's happening right now. This is it. And I think, to be honest with you, people are getting bored of general sports. I'm a massive rugby fan, don't get me wrong, but I've watched so many rugby games that it's like, how much more can you do? The game has got its own limitations. Whereas you look at esports, games
It's
and
a
game
patch.
titles that are coming out. It's a patch. Anything can change. It's a new hero. It's a new ability. You can change the rules of rugby in the sense of, okay, you can kick over the post and now it's 5 points instead of 3 points. Whoopie whoop, great deal. Okay, well, great. Now we got a new hero that brings not a meatball, but an entire plates and knives and forks or whatever it is down from the sky. Now that's awesome. I want to watch that again. The thing is, there's so much opportunity to add to the game and add to the viewership, part of it. That's where esports can dominate general sports.
So I have a question for you actually. So we're all in agreement that, especially that signal that we saw from ESL, that's sort of a good transition point for esports into a real thing.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that esports or that traditional sports has always had over gaming is the role of the non-players, right? So how important the coach is, how important the backstaff are, how important substitutes are, etc. Right? So there's a whole litany of things that take place. So especially with regards to coaches and managers, do you foresee that having a huge impact on esports in general? And secondly, in any future non-LAN or on-LAN possible Mega 8 events, what do you feel about coaches being involved, like say in drafting, for example, if we're going to use Dota 2?
I think coaches should. I think every team should have a coach. I think if you're playing in prize pool tournaments, you should have a coach. I'm honest. I don't see why you shouldn't. I think every team should have a coach. I think it brings a huge element. I mean, if you look at you look at a football game, as you say, you've got. And I look at Chelsea Man United the other night. Antonio Conte was going absolutely wild on the side of the field, but he was giving his players direction. He was in the game, but he was out the game, and it gives you that sort of third person view. And I believe that the players should get that. It has an extra element, and from a viewer's point of view, it's only going to bring better Dota or better CS. So as a tournament organizer, I don't see why not. I mean, I can understand if one team has a coach and another team doesn't have a coach. Okay, there's clearly going to be advantage. But all I'm going to say to the other team is go get a coach.
You get a coach, yeah.
That's it. So get coaches, get them in, and you're going to see your level of Dota rise as well. So I do believe in it. I think it's something that should happen. But I think I just want to add a point to that as well. The big thing, if you look at overseas sports, especially football, it's media, man. Media makes football. I mean, Ronaldo is good. I mean, Neymar is good. Their conversion rates are good, but it's how built up all these guys. They are celebrities. Real Madrid players are celebrities. I mean, they are everywhere, and it's just media exposure, media exposure, media exposure. So for me, to grow esports, and I think it's quite difficult in South Africa because obviously we're a very small market, but to grow it overseas, guys like Dendi, guys like who else, Kuroki, Miracle. When you start seeing those guys on billboards and Coke cans and whatever it is, that's when you know esports is at its peak. That's when you know it's going to be there. And I think we need to start moving towards it as well. Guys like Travis Castaway need to be sort of recognizable faces in the country. If somebody says, "Oh, there's that guy that plays PC games for a living and he does really well at it," like, let me go talk to him. He's an interesting guy. The media needs to make him interesting, and that partly comes from a tournament organizer's point of view, but it also comes from newspapers, radio, TV. That we need to pick that up and somehow get that going. Once you've got that going, then the roller coaster starts to fall. Not starts to fall, starts to go. And then you'll see esports grow big time.
So that's a challenge to Sargon, I guess.
I guess, yeah. Sargon and the rest of the
Put in your work, Sargon.
Fair point. But yeah, so that's sort of it. I mean, yeah. Look, I think we've got a long way to go, and I've said it before. I think tournament organizers need to be a little bit less overzealous this year, coming in 2018. I think this year was the year of hype. I guess it was the year of hype and it was the year of big prize pools, but I don't think it's sustainable. And I'm worried, not from a Mega A point of view, but more from our competitors' point of view, that a lot of the guys aren't going to be able to sustain these huge prize pools going forward. And Mega 8 has never had a million rand prize pool. We're going to build up to it, and we'll get there. Don't get me wrong, but it's a simple case of we don't see the value in it yet, and the sponsors aren't going to see the value in it yet. And I'm worried that big big tournament organizers are going very big, promising a lot and not delivering, and that for me is going to kill the market, and I'm a bit worried about that. So let's see how it goes next year. I hope that next year is a year of sustainability and growth rather than the year of who can put up 2 million rand this time or who can put up 3 million rand, because you're not going to get the value for 3 million rand. It's just not there yet. Rather invest slowly. Let's build this thing up. And then we can throw 3 million. And the thing is, what you'll find is if you do it slower, I think, and more consistently, you'll grow it to a point where 3 million is going to be a very small number, because you're going to have overseas companies coming in here, putting in a huge amount of money, including Valve, and they're going to have $500,000, prize pools and so on and so forth. We've got to make it attractive, and we've got to make it sustainable and stable for those big players to come in here and put that kind of money in.
Right. And we spoke about a lot of important things tonight, but on this topic, I want to ask you, like, from a tournament organizer's point of view, what is like the sort of mindset going behind approaching sponsors or sponsors coming in? What are some of the things that they look for? What are some of the things that you want to make look appealing towards sponsors?
So, I mean, I think that the hardest thing at the moment is esports to sponsors and the general public is a new thing, especially in South Africa. I mean, it's a brand new thing. And right now, it's a hype word. Esports is a hype word. Everyone knows about it, or kind of knows about it, but doesn't really know what it is and doesn't really know how to get into it. So it's a case of going in there. I guess every sponsorship sale is a convincing sale. You've got to convince them why they should be getting in and who their target market is. So what we try to do is go in and sort of show them the numbers, show them the growth, and show them that this is the new market and these are your new customers coming through. You're not going to get your 40-year-old, 50-year-old guys. I mean, you get them in the community, but it's not going to be your main target market. Your main target market is your 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old guys. They're going to be buying your products or using your product consistently, and they are technically the millennial market that all the sponsors want to hit. So it's basically going in there and saying, listen, we've got your new market, they're here with us, come sponsor us.
Give us money.
Give us money, basically. Yeah, give us money, obviously. That's kind of the whole point. And look, it's not easy. I mean, sponsorship sales is not an easy thing. It's probably the most difficult thing to do in a business, because it's a tough model to sustain, because you constantly got to go back and you get it for 6 months, then you got to go renew it, and you got to go back, and it's not easy. But it's something that obviously we have to do. And once we get the ball rolling, and once sponsors start seeing value being returned, I think you'll see more and more money coming in, and more different brands, especially more commercial brands, guys like McDonald's, like Coke, like Burger King, those, or Doritos, those are the sort of brands you want in esports, because those are the guys that have the money to keep this industry sustainable and growing.
I actually have a question to ask you on that point, right? So
Sure.
One of the things that's always been concerning, well, in South Africa at large, but I think it's going to become apparent in the future for us in terms of gaming, is that we have a really bad track record of making sure that we know who's funding what, right? So you often end up in a situation where something you deeply care about, or some activity you're trying to get engaged in, you end up taking money that's not necessarily the cleanest money or from the most reputable people. Sometimes for a lack of actual options, but it's still a thing, right? And then further down the line, allegations, people come out, say, hey, you took money from this person at that point, and now you have to sort of retroactively defend yourself. And everybody who was associated with you initially has to also defend themselves. So if you wouldn't mind, right, could you tell us some of your primary sponsors? And another reason I think it's important is, as you're mentioning now, that culture of sponsorship doesn't exist as of yet for gaming in SA. So I think it's important for us to know who is actually laying down the groundwork, right? So that in future, we know who was there at the beginning. So we can say, all right, these guys, they might not be putting up the most amount of money now, but in the past, they've been reliable. They've always worked with us. They've always helped supply some of the talent that propelled us to the point we'll be in future. So would you mind telling us some of the people that give you the money to make all this magic happen?
Well, I'll be honest with you, sponsors haven't really come to the plate massively. I mean, MTN did sponsor us for a certain amount of time, and they were great to work with, and they were, and we're at the moment in talks with them again to renew it. But to be honest with you, right now it's actually us. It's our holding companies that are actually funding this and looking to grow the markets. I mean, Kagiso Media basically bankrolls Mega 8. And allows us to get in. So at the moment, I wouldn't say look at any sponsors. I would say rather look at the actual companies themselves, because guys are outlaying a lot of capital cost to make sure that this industry grows and is going. Kwesi, I know, is doing the same. Telkom's doing the same as well. But guys, these big corporates are actually putting the money into esports, into their own companies and trying to grow them. So if you are looking for people to support and grow, it's basically it's our holding companies, it's our parent companies that are keeping us going. So yeah, I mean that's sort of the reality of it at the moment. I think in esports, I know Arena and them have a couple sponsors as well. I don't know what the values are, what they've got, and I mean you'd have to ask Luca that. But from I think those three, from what I know, it's the holding companies that are keeping us afloat and making sure esports is alive and well in South Africa.
All right, that makes
Nice.
sense. Yeah, because it's like that makes sense because it is you guys are investing into the scene, right? It's not there's no outside people saying, okay, come let's help these guys along. It's okay, we want to do this, we gotta go put it in ourselves, that sort of jazz.
Completely, yeah. I mean, that's really it. And I think we have a belief that esports is going to be a big thing in the future, and it's technically a bit of a land grab at the moment. Who's going to be the big tournament organizer? Who's going to be the thing? If I'm honest, realistically, no one's going to land grab it. Telkom's had it for 10 years. They clearly are not. They don't hold it at the moment. But what they are is a very big player in the market. As are we, as is Metal State, as is Arena, as is Kwese. And unfortunately, we all need each other because nobody can host tournaments year in, year out for 365 days a year by themselves in this current market. So we all need each other in this ecosystem to keep esports alive and keep gaming going. And that's why Mega 8 is always willing to work with what is technically our competitors. And we've always said that. We've always we've got very good relationships with Kwese. We've got great relationships with Metal State. Well, decent relations. But when I say great, I mean we're on good terms with Metal State. No, we haven't had anything.
We're not killing each other yet.
We're not killing each other, and we always share schedule info also with Kwese. So it's not a case of like, oh, we're going to try to screw each other over. It's never. If the guys want to talk, the door's open, the table's there, and the coffees are really hot. So, I think, and right now, that's one thing that I have found great about the industry. That all the big players right now are actually willing to talk, are willing to work together to make sure that this does succeed. But I do believe we do need a little bit more interaction with each other, and hopefully that'll happen in 2018.
Speaking of your competitors, actually, can I ask, besides Mega 8, you can't choose any of the Mega 8 tournaments. What's been your favorite SA tournament in the last 3 years?
Oh, 3 years. Sure. Sure, that's a tough one. I mean, to be honest, the best SA tournaments in the last 3 years has got to go. I mean, from what point of view? Are you saying from a viewership point of view?
Yeah. Just you personally. Like when you looked at the tournament and you said to yourself, "This is what an SA tournament ideally should look like." What's been the closest example of that you've seen in the last 3 years?
The ESL Championships at Rage.
Yeah,
I think
that was pretty hard.
Yeah, the production value was fantastic. Look, I didn't like the format. If I'm honest, I didn't like the format. I didn't like that it was only 4 teams. I'm not too sure why they did that. I mean, I understand that they ran a whole league before it, and I did appreciate that, but I thought they should have had a bit more games. I thought it was a bit lackluster that there was only 4 games. There was Energy and Bravado, and then 2 random teams from Africa, and they were technically random teams because nobody really knew them. So I thought that they should have added some more teams, and whatever. But I think from a production point of view, from a actual just tournament organizer point of view, it ran very well, and I was very impressed with it. So for me, that was so far, bar all the Mega 8 amazing tournaments that are the greatest in the world, that was second best for sure.
So as you come to the close to this podcast, gentlemen, or any final thoughts?
Well, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on. It's been great chatting to you guys, and I hope the listeners enjoy this. Please do check out the Mega 8 Pro 16 League on our YouTube channel. There are 2 streams. There is the professional stream for all those who think they're pro, and there is the noob stream for all those who want to be pro. So come join us. Games on Sundays at 3 and 6, and you will see both Snare and Kaameel casting on there.
As always, thank you, Mr. Snare, for co-hosting for me, and thank you, Alex, for being our guest tonight.
Pleasure, man. Anytime. I would love to come back. Maybe just before the LAN/not LAN/probably LAN tournament, and we can chat about that. And yeah, guys, let's grow esports in South Africa.
Thank you, everybody, and good night.